Reviving an art form at a time when dance practices were highly stigmatized, socially rejected, and morally condemned is a complex task, no doubt. Those who undertake such efforts are later remembered as revivalists or cultural forefathers. Across India, nationalist dance revival movements reveal varied context and strategies when we look into it through historical and political lenses. However, the case of Mohiniyattam stands slightly different. Here, the name we always remember as a guiding force is the nationalist leader and poet Mahakavi Vallathole Narayana Menon, who founded the pioneering institution Kerala Kalamandalam along with Manakkulam Mukundaraja and Kakkata Karanavappada. Here we briefly look at Vallathole's role in transforming Mohiniyattam from a marginalized and morally suspect practice into a reconstructed, codified, and widely accepted dance form. While Vallathol and his team initially focused on the development and codification of Kathakali in Kalamandalam, they later chose Mohiniyattam, a dance form primarily practiced in central Kerala and its neighboring regions at that time. They wanted to take this dance form also as a regional icon. There were multiple reasons for this choice. One was the recognition of the strong aesthetic potential of the dance form. Another was its relatively gentle and lyrical nature when compared to Kathakali. Kathakali, with its complex structure and intense dramaturgy, was often difficult for common audience to enjoy. So Mohiniyattam, being a softer female dance form, was more adaptable to diverse performance venues and attractive to common audience. And that could help performers and troops to reach to wider audience. Vallathol faced strong resistance for this decision from the conservative sections of society. One of the earliest challenges to establish Mohiniyattam classes within an institutional setup was finding teachers and students. Mohiniyattam was never a traditional family occupation or a caste-based occupation, though the performers of those periods were Nayar women. However, the Nayar community was never identified as a hereditary dancer or artist community like the performer communities existed in the neighboring states. So the lineages predominantly existed as Guru Shishya Parampara. And sadly, the chain of the lineages were partially broken. The Kalamandalam team approached different families where there were ladies who were trained in Mohiniyattam to come to teach dance, and also other families to convince them to send their daughters and sisters to learn dance to Kalamandalam. Vallathol assured them that the dance would be refined, stripped of elements considered morally inappropriate, seductress, and reshaped into a dignified art practice. Letters were written, personal visits were made, and advertisements were placed in newspapers. Haimavati Gopal, a student from the 1950 batch, recalls an advertisement for Mohiniyattam classes published in the Express newspaper. It was a Malayalam newspaper. Vallathol also paid special attention to ensuring a secular and inclusive vision for dance in Kalamandalam. A significant example is his personal visit to a traditional Christian family in Poongunnam, Thrissur, to invite a young girl to join the Mohiniyattam classes at the Kalamandalam in 1950. This marked the entry of Clara, the first Christian student of Mohiniyattam, who later known as Kalamandalam Clara. Clara teacher still remembers Vallathol's visit to her home and his efforts to convince her elder brother to send her to learn dance. She was remembered as one of the most promising students of the batch by Kanur Krishnan Namboodirippada, who was closely associated with Kalamandalam during the 1950s. Clara teacher will be introduced in Kaishiki Tales series in one of the coming videos. Along with these institutional efforts, Vallathol actively found and created performance spaces for Mohiniyattam. The dance was presented at poetry gatherings, literary meetings, and cultural events and festivals, and was often included with Kathakali performances. Kalamandalam Kalyanikoti Amma fondly recalls Vallathol's role in reshaping Mohiniyattam. As she states in her book, several structural changes were introduced to align the dance form with other codified classical systems. The traditional practice of the Nattuvan standing behind the dancer and playing the cymbals was changed, and the teacher was given a seat on the right side of the performer. Percussion accompaniments shifted from Toppi Maddalam to Mridangam, and instruments such as Edakya and violin were incorporated. These changes helped align Mohiniyattam with the Carnatic music system and other dance traditions from the neighboring states. Codified patterns of hand gestures and eye movements were developed, drawing inspiration from Kathakali techniques with the help of Kathakali maestros. Certain older practices were consciously removed, including pieces like Mukuti. We discussed about Mukuti in one of the previous videos. So, what the process was all about? A deliberate reframing of Mohiniyattam to suit evolving social, moral, and aesthetic expectations. This, of course, resulted in leaving behind some earlier traditions. But what is to be remembered here is his commitment to bring up a tradition which was in a state of extinction, to take more inclusive effort to make this dance suitable for everyone, irrespective of the religion, caste, and background, and also raising awareness and building up rasikas for this dance form. Without such a visionary intervention, Mohiniyattam may not have continued as a living tradition. Kalyanikutti Amma emotionally recalls Vallathole's final words to her from his bedridden state, as he entrusted her and advised her to take the responsibility to take Mohiniyattam to greater heights. Thus, the framing and reframing of Mohiniyattam was not accidental, but rather the result of Vallathole's vision, authority, and ability to implement change. But later it was carried forward through different paths by performers, gurus, and new patrons.